The crystal chandeliers of OK hotels cast dancing shadows across the marble floor as Chinedu Nedu Okechukwu adjusted his bow tie for the third time. At 29, he should have been comfortable in his own skin by now, but the weight of his father's expectations pressed against his shoulders like an ill-fitting suit. "Stop fidgeting," Kevin Adesina muttered beside him, champagne already loosening his tongue despite the early hour. "You look like you're heading to a funeral, not celebrating your own success." Nedu forced a smile. Success. The grand opening of the newest OK Hotels branch was supposed to be his chance to show his father that he was more than just a handsome face who looked good in photographs with potential investors' daughters. The ballroom filled with the country's elite, their conversations a familiar symphony of business deals disguised as pleasantries. Nedu moved through the crowd with practiced ease, but his attention was caught by a scene near the refreshment table. A young woman in an usher's uniform was stepping back from Chief Balogun, one of his father's associates, whose wandering hands were as notorious as his business dealings. Her posture was straight, professional, but Nedu caught the flash of steel in her eyes. Not fear, but controlled anger. Without thinking, he crossed the room. "Chief Balogun, I believe Senator Wonsu is looking for you." The old man squinted slightly, but he backed away with a forced laugh. The young woman, Nedu noticed her name tag read Jemima, gave him a brief nod of acknowledgement before returning to her duties. No gratitude, no lingering glances, just professional courtesy. For some reason, that intrigued him more than any flirtation could have. Jemima, Maima Osuji's alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., same as every other morning. In the darkness of the two-bedroom flat, which she shared with her mother and younger brother Chike, she moved quietly through her routine. Shower, prayer, preparing breakfast, and the careful ironing of her clothes. The private nursery and primary school where she taught 23 four-year-olds barely paid enough to cover her own share of the bills, but she loved the work. Children didn't care about her second-hand blouses or the fact that she took commercial buses instead of cars. They only cared that she read them stories with different voices and helped them learn their letters. But lately, even the children's laughter couldn't shake the growing unease in her chest. Her boyfriend, Tim, had been distant for weeks now. Missed dates, cancelled plans, always claiming work emergencies that somehow only happened in the evenings. Another site inspection ran late, he had explained the previous weekend, when he showed up 3 hours after their planned dinner time. "You know how these clients can be," he explained. Mima had nodded and smiled, but something felt wrong. Tim had never been passionate about his engineering work before. It was just a job that paid well and impressed her mother. Now, suddenly, every project was urgent. Every client demanded his personal attention after hours. "Another wedding gig this weekend," her cousin Sylvia announced over the phone during lunch break. "Same rate, different rich people. Are you in?" she asked her. Mima hesitated. The ushering work through Sylvia's event company was good money, but it meant entering spaces where she felt like an observer of lives she had never lived. Still, her mother's arthritis medication wasn't getting cheaper, and Tim's increasing absence meant she was handling more bills alone. "Which hotel?" Mima asked. "OK Hotels again. Apparently, the CEO specifically requested for our team Sylvia replied excited. That Saturday, as she arranged champagne flutes on crisp white tablecloths at Kevin's birthday party, Mima tried to push thoughts of Tim's behavior from her mind. He had promised to pick her up after the event, another attempt to make up for his recent absences. The rooftop of OK Hotels had been transformed into a playground for the young and wealthy. The DJ's music pulsed through speakers, while guests posed for photos against the city skyline. Mima moved through the crowd like a ghost, refilling glasses and clearing plates with efficient grace. Every time the CEO, Nedu, approached, she managed to be needed elsewhere. She had learned his name from Sylvia, who seemed to know everything about everybody that was anybody in the town. From Sylvia's stories, he wasn't just anybody, he was one of the big boys in town. There was something unsettling about his attention, not because it was unwelcome, but because she found herself looking forward to their brief exchanges. You know, her name is Jemima Osuji, Kevin said to Nedu at one point, not bothering to lower his voice. 26, teaches at some school, has a boyfriend, some engineer. Usually, Nedu thought of Kevin as a nosy busybody, but today, he was grateful for his nosiness. Nedu's expression didn't change, but he listened attentively as Kevin spoke. Near the end of the night, he tried once more. Can I offer you ladies a ride home? Thank you, but no, Mima replied, her voice polite but firm. My boyfriend is picking me up, she said, stressing the boyfriend part. But as they waited outside, no car came. After 30 minutes, Sylvia called a taxi while Mima checked her phone for the fifth time. No messages from Tim. Nedu watched from the hotel entrance, noting how Mima's composure never cracked, despite the obvious disappointment. When she finally got into the taxi, she held her head high, but he caught the brief moment when her shoulders sagged. Over the following weeks, Tim's absences became longer, his explanations more elaborate. A major project in Abuja that required weekend site visits, a difficult client who insisted on evening meetings, a training program that somehow never appeared on any official schedule. Mima found herself making excuses for him to her family, covering for missed dinners and cancelled plans. Her mother, who had always approved of Tim's stability, began asking pointed questions. Where is this boy? Every time I ask you about him, you have a different story. He's working hard, Mama, she explained. The economy is difficult. He's just trying to secure his promotion. But doubt had planted itself firmly in her chest, growing stronger and stronger with each unreturned call, each missed date. It was during this period of uncertainty that Nedu began appearing in her life with increasing frequency. Not pushy or demanding, just present. When she worked events at his hotel, he would stop by with a polite greeting. When she mentioned loving a particular author during one conversation which he had overheard, that book appeared at the reception desk the next week with a simple note. Thought you might enjoy this. Mima told herself it was just friendly courtesy. She was in a relationship, even if that relationship felt increasingly fragile. But she couldn't deny that Nedu's consistent presence was a stark contrast to Tim's growing absence. The end came on a Thursday evening. Mima had finished her after-school tutoring session and decided to surprise Tim at his apartment with his favorite pepper soup from one of their favorite restaurants. She still had keys from when he had been trying to prove to her that he had nothing to hide. She had kept the key but never used it. She climbed the stairs to his apartment, balancing the takeaway container and her handbag. The door was unlocked, which wasn't unusual. Tim often forgot to lock it when he was home. Happy that she wouldn't have to put the food in the freezer and then reheat it when he came back, she opened the door with a smile. The scene inside froze her in place. Tim was there, tangled in bedsheets with his neighbor, the same woman who had chatted with Mima about soap operas and the rising price of tomatoes on countless occasions. The shock took the breath from her lungs, not just at the betrayal, but at how natural they looked together, wrapped up in each other's arms. How comfortable and familiar it looked. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a relationship. "Babe," Tim started, scrambling upright, his voice thick with panic. But Mima was already turning away, the pepper soup container hitting the floor with a splash that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Her legs carried her faster than she thought they ever could. He was still struggling with his pants when she got to the junction. Before he was decent enough to go after her, she was already out of sight. She walked home in a daze, the adrenaline finally wearing off, her phone buzzing with Tim's increasingly frantic calls. By the time she reached her apartment, the shock had turned into a cold, clear understanding. This had been going on for much longer than a few weeks. All those late meetings, weekend emergencies, cancelled dates, they had all been lies. Her phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Tim. "Mima, are you okay?" Sylvia's voice asked, concerned when she remained silent after accepting the call. "He wasn't working late," was the only reply she could manage. Sylvia didn't need further explanation. She understood. She stayed on the line and listened as Mima finally began to cry. The healing took weeks. Tim had been her first serious relationship, the one she had been certain would lead to marriage. The betrayal had shaken her trust in her own judgment. How had she missed the signs? Did everyone else know? She threw herself into work with renewed focus, staying late to prepare elaborate lesson plans and organizing new learning activities for her students. All the while, trying to hide the truth from her mother, who had already begun picking out grandkids' names. It was during this period that Nedu's quiet courtship began in earnest. Not aggressive pursuit, but gentle persistence. An invitation to a small art exhibition. A suggestion that she might enjoy a particular jazz performance. "I know you're going through a difficult time," he said, after she had agreed to join him for dinner one evening. "I'm not trying to rush you into anything. I just think you might enjoy the company." The honesty was refreshing. Slowly, carefully, Mima began to say yes to these small invitations. Sylvia had insisted she did. She learned that Nedu was different from what she had expected. Yes, he was wealthy and privileged, but he was also genuinely curious about her work, her thoughts on child development, her dreams of making a huge impact in the world, one child at a time. He listened when she spoke and remembered details from their conversations. More importantly, he was consistent. When he said he would call, he called. When he made plans, he kept them. 3 months after Tim's betrayal, Maima's relationship with Nedu had settled into a comfortable rhythm of dinner dates, weekend outings, and long conversations that stretched past midnight. But both families had begun to take notice. The fight with his parents came on a Sunday morning in his father's study, surrounded by leather-bound books and expensive table lights. "The Clinton girl is perfect for you," his mother said, her voice carrying the tone that had ended arguments throughout his childhood. "Her father owns numerous estates. She's well educated and well behaved." "I'm seeing someone," Nedu replied again, as if saying it multiple times would make his parents acknowledge his word. Chief Okechukwu looked at him over the rim of his glasses. "The teacher? Boy, be reasonable. A little fun is one thing, but marriage requires compatibility." "This isn't just a little fun, Dad. I'm serious about her," he retorted, sounding like a child throwing a tantrum even to his own ears. His parents exchanged glances that spoke volumes. "Then you're making a mistake that could cost you everything you've built," his father said. "I won't watch you throw away your future for infatuation." Nedu heard the threat in the simple statement clearly. Meanwhile, Maima faced her own family pressure. Her mother, who had finally stopped asking about Tim, was not impressed with his replacement. "How well do you know this young man?" she asked over dinner. "Hope he's not the type that will play with a girl and then go on to marry his own kind. I don't want to see you suffer another heartbreak." "Nedu isn't like that, Mama," Maima replied, hoping she was correct. "Every girl thinks her man is different," her mother continued. "But when it's time to choose between you and his family, which do you think he will pick?" Maima fell silent, having no reply to give, taking out her frustration instead on the cold yam in her plate. The crisis came 6 months after they had begun dating seriously. Nedu's parents had arranged a dinner with the Clinton family, supposedly a business meeting, but everyone understood the real purpose of the meeting. Nedu attended out of respect for his parents, intending to politely deflect any romantic intentions. But in their circle, news moved fast, and by the next morning, photos from the dinner were circulating on social media with captions speculating about an engagement announcement. Maima saw the photos at school, shown to her by a well-meaning colleague who thought she should know. The images showed Nedu looking polished and comfortable next to Winifred Clinton, who was stunning enough to be a model. When Nedu called that afternoon to explain, Maima listened quietly to his frustrated account of the evening. "It meant nothing," he insisted. "I was clear with everyone about my intentions. These gossip bloggers just make up stories." Maima asked when he was done. "Why did you go, when you already knew their intentions?" "I had to. My parents," he started, but she interrupted him, "will always come first." The silence that followed stretched too long. That evening, when he appeared at her apartment with flowers and apologies, Maima had already made her decision. "This isn't working," she said simply. "Why?" he questioned. "Because of one dinner? Because of the gossip?" She sighed. "Because I am tired of feeling like I'm auditioning for your real life." Her voice was steady, even a bit frustrated. "Your parents will never accept me. Your world will never include me as anything more than a temporary distraction. And I can't keep pretending that that's enough for me." "Maima," he tried. "I'm sorry, but I deserve better than being someone's rebellion against their family." The words cut him deep, partly because they weren't entirely wrong. They broke up on a Tuesday evening, not with drama or declarations, but with the quiet acknowledgement that the forces pulling them apart had become stronger than those holding them together. Nedu finally had the big confrontation with his parents that had been brewing for years. When they pressed him to pursue Winifred Clinton, he refused outrightly, accepting their ultimatum: marry within their expectations or face removal from the family business. "Then remove me," he said. His mother looked stunned. "Chinedu Okechukwu, don't be ridiculous." Nedu knew she was furious because that was the only time she would ever call his full name. "I'm not being ridiculous. I'm being honest. I won't marry someone I don't love just to preserve a business arrangement." Chief Okechukwu's face remained impassive. "Then you will leave us no choice, young man." Nedu nodded. "I understand." But when he left his family's compound that night, uncertain when he would be welcomed back, the victory felt hollow. He had stood up for his principles, but the woman he had stood up for was no longer in his life. Maima returned to the rhythm of teaching and family responsibilities with the relief of familiar routine. She avoided events where she might encounter Nedu's world, turning down even Sylvia's requests for help with high-profile gigs. The loneliness was unexpected. She had lived independently before Nedu, but somehow his absence left echoes in spaces she hadn't realized he had filled. Sunday afternoons felt particularly empty. They had spent so many of them exploring the town together, finding small restaurants and quiet parks where they could talk for hours. Both of them tried dating other people. Nedu was linked to a successful architect, then a lawyer, then a doctor. Women who made sense on paper but left him feeling nothing. Maima accepted invitations from a fellow teacher and even a civil servant from her church. Good men who treated her well and bored her completely. 4 months after the breakup, Sylvia had had enough of her cousin's determined cheerfulness that fooled no one. "There's an art exhibition next Saturday," she announced over lunch. "Small, intimate. You need to get out of this apartment." "I get out plenty," Maima argued. "Going to the market doesn't count," Sylvia scolded. "It's time for you to try socializing with adults who don't need your help tying their shoes." Maima agreed, partly because Sylvia would keep pestering her otherwise, and partly because she genuinely missed the art scene Nidu had introduced her to. Meanwhile, Kevin was having a similar conversation with Nedu at their usual Thursday night spot. "You're turning into a monk, my friend," Kevin observed, watching his friend push food around his plate without eating it. "When was the last time you did something that wasn't work-related?" "I'm building a business, Kevin. It takes focus, something you wouldn't know about," Nedu said. "It takes balance. There's an art exhibition this weekend. You used to love that stuff. Come with me," Kevin pestered. Nedu started to decline, then reconsidered. He had been working too much, using 18-hour days to avoid thinking about what he had lost. Maybe Kevin was right. What neither Maima nor Nedu knew was that Sylvia and Kevin had been coordinating this plan for weeks. "You think they still have feelings for each other?" Sylvia had asked during one of their calls. "Are you kidding?" "Nedu has been miserable for months. He goes through the motions of life, but it's like watching a robot pretend to be human," Kevin said with a chuckle. "Maima too. She smiles and says she's fine, but I can see right through her. Maybe if they only had an opportunity to talk," Sylvia said hopefully. It's worth a try, Kevin agreed. Worst case scenario, it will be a very awkward evening. The art exhibition was at a small gallery on the island, showcasing emerging local artists. The space was intimate, with maybe 40 guests, moving quietly between displays of vibrant paintings and striking sculptures. Maima arrived first, grateful for the peaceful atmosphere after a week of managing energetic 4-year-olds. She was studying a particularly bold abstract piece when she heard a familiar voice. That's one of my favorites too. She turned slowly, her heart jumping despite months of preparation for this possibility. Nedu stood a few feet away, looking exactly the same, yet somehow different. Still tall and handsome, but there was something in his eyes, a weariness that hadn't been there before. "Hello, Nedu," she said, trying to steal her heart. "Hello, Maima," he replied, matching her formal tone. The formality felt strange after everything they had shared, but neither of them seemed to know how to bridge the gap. "How have you been?" he asked. "Fine. Busy with school." "You?" she replied. "Good. The business is growing," he stated simply. They stood in uncomfortable silence, both acutely aware of what they weren't saying. Around them, other gallery visitors moved and chatted, but their small space felt isolated. "I should probably," Mima started, making to leave. "Mima, wait." Nedu's voice was tentative. "Could we? Would you like to get dinner sometime? Just to talk properly." She hesitated. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, but the part that remembered the pain of their breakup held her back. "I don't know if that is a good idea," she said finally. "Just one meal, as friends. We never really got to talk about what happened between us." Before she could answer, Sylvia appeared with Kelvin in tow, both wearing expressions of studied innocence. "Oh, look who's here!" Sylvia exclaimed with fake surprise. "What a coincidence!" Maima and Nedu exchanged glances, both realizing they had been set up. "Very subtle," Nedu said dryly. Kevin grinned. "Subtlety is overrated. How about we all grab dinner? Nothing romantic, just four friends hanging out." The dinner was less awkward than expected, largely because Sylvia and Kevin carried most of the conversation, with stories about work, mutual friends, and daily struggles. Maima and Nedu contributed when directly addressed, but mostly observed each other carefully. She noticed that he looked tired, despite his success, that he had lost some weight, that his smile didn't quite reach his eyes the way they used to. He noticed that she seemed more guarded, that she chose her words more carefully, that she no longer leaned forward when engaged in conversation. They were different people than they had been 5 months ago, changed by the breakup and its aftermath. When the evening ended, Nedu offered to drive Maima home. She hesitated, then accepted, telling herself it was just practical since they lived in the same general direction. The car ride was quiet until they reached a traffic jam on the way. "I'm sorry," Nedu said suddenly, "for how things ended, for not fighting harder for us." Maima stared out of the window at the many cars trying to make their way home. "We both made choices," she said flatly. "Did we? Or did we just let other people's expectations make choices for us?" he questioned. She didn't answer, but the question hung between them long after he had dropped her off at home. Over the following weeks, they began texting a bit. Nothing romantic, just friendly check-ins that gradually became more frequent. When she mentioned struggling with a parent who was challenging her teaching methods, he offered encouragement. And when his business faced a setback, she sent supportive messages. Slowly, carefully, they began rebuilding a friendship from the ruins of their romance. 2 months after the art gallery encounter, they had dinner for the first time since their breakup, then a long walk that lasted until sunrise. "I've missed this," Maima admitted as they watched the sunrise. "Talking to someone who really listens." "I've missed you," Nedu said simply. "Not just the relationship. I've missed my friend." It was an important distinction. They were rebuilding trust from the foundation up, not trying to recapture what they had lost. The second courtship was different from the first, more cautious, more intentional. They talked through their previous mistakes, acknowledged their fears, and set clearer boundaries with their families. "If we try this again," Maima said one evening over dinner, "it can't be about proving anything to our parents or society. It has to be about us. Only us." "Agreed," he nodded. "And we can't let outside pressure make our decisions. We talk to each other first. Always." She took a deep breath before asking, "And if your parents never accept me?" Nedu took her hand across the table. "Then they will have to accept that I've chosen my own path. I already walked away from their business once. I can live with their disapproval if I have to." She paused for a bit, digesting his words. "And if my mother keeps saying you will eventually leave me for someone from your own class?" He squeezed her hand gently. "Then she'll have to watch me prove to her how wrong she is every single day for as long as it takes." This time, when Nedu introduced Maima to his parents, the dynamic was different. His business success had earned their grudging respect, and his obvious happiness with Maima was harder to dismiss. Mrs. Okechukwu was still cool, but she asked genuine questions about Maima's work and listened to the answers. Chief Okechukwu seemed to have accepted that his son's mind was made up. "She makes you happy," he said to Nedu after dinner. It wasn't exactly approval, but it wasn't opposition either. Maima's mother took longer to warm up, but Nedu's consistency gradually won her over. He showed up for family events, helped with household repairs, and treated Maima with obvious respect and affection. "Eh, maybe I was wrong about him," she admitted to Maima one Sunday. "He seems different from other spoilt rich guys." The proposal came on a Friday afternoon in Maima's classroom, after she had finished preparing lessons for the following week. Nedu appeared with lunch from her favorite restaurant and a simple diamond ring that caught the fluorescent lighting. "I know we tried this before and it didn't work," he said, kneeling beside her tiny plastic chair. "But I also know that every good day I've had in the past 6 months got better when I shared it with you." He took her hand, looking ridiculous and perfect in equal measure. "I'm not asking you to marry my family, or my bank account, or my reputation. I'm asking you to marry me and build something new together. Will you?" Through the tears, she said yes.